everybody. Thank you for coming back to my channel. Today I'd like to share with you a conversation I had with the fabulous musician violinist Chika Wie. She is an experienced Suzuki method violin teacher as well as a Suzuki parent. I've learned so much from her about how to approach practicing with my kids, as well as got so inspired by her personal musical journey. So I hope you enjoy this conversation, like this video, and subscribe to this channel. Without further ado, here's the interview. Well, Chica, thank you so much for spending time with me. I'm so excited to get to know you a little bit more. And I know that you're a violin teacher, like you've grew up through the Suzuki method, learning violin, and then continued with your music throughout your life. And it's just so amazing to see that. And you're a teacher as well as a parent now with kids who are also learning in the Suzuki method. So maybe we can start by just, can you share a little bit about like growing up, like, and you first grew up in Japan, right? And did you already learn music when you were there?
I think how I started is probably the funniest part of all of this. I must have known what violin sounded like and how it looked like and things like that. But apparently, I saw this. One of those kids shows with like like a young host, uh,
Yeah.
and I watched one of those shows, and the girl that's hosting the show comes on with the violin, and she
Oh.
apparently plays terribly. And then my mom said my eyes got really big. And then I said, I want to learn the violin, mom. And so I'm not exactly sure what inspired me to start from there. But I think my theory is that, violin oftentimes looks so unreachable. It's it looks so impossible to even pick it up, right? And I think when I saw that somebody was doing badly, it's like I kind of saw, okay, I can get there first.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I can kind of take step by step. I mean, I don't know what was going on in my 3 or 4 year old head, but I can assume that that's probably what happened given my current personality.
That makes sense. It's like if it's okay for someone to play badly on TV, then how bad could it be for me, right?
Yeah, or something. I mean, it was, not as scary, I guess. It looked like, okay, I can just sort of pick it up and
Mhm.
at least I can aspire to be like that first.
That's a great point because I feel like it's almost like giving yourself permission to
Mhm.
like go through that process. It's not like a one step, you're a pro kind of journey, right?
Mhm. Yep. Yeah. So
So
that's when I started, 4 years old. And I started with the Suzuki method. I lived in Nagoya, where Dr. Suzuki is actually from Nagoya, and there's a huge violin factory, Suzuki violin factory that's in Nagoya. So I studied with one of the Suzuki teachers, and he was just incredibly nice. But I don't do well with nice. I need to be told exactly what to fix. So I studied with the teacher for I think about 3 years. But I guess I had been a lot more ambitious than what he was used to. So he would
Oh,
assign me one line to play, and I'd just be like, I want to play the whole piece.
mm-hmm.
And then he's
Just
just
want to
like,
go for it.
slow down. You need to learn the details, and I understand that now because I'm a teacher, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I just wanted to just be able to play as many things as possible in as short of amount of a time as possible. I mean, I think I did practice quite a bit, like maybe like an hour a day or something like that.
Well, that's a lot for that age.
Yeah, yeah. So when I was 7, I switched to what is called a more traditional teacher. She's not a Suzuki method teacher, like no group class or anything like that, right? And then so she was a concert violinist. So I loved going to see her play on stage, and I think that's what inspired me to play like that at a young age. So that's kind of been my journey. And on that time, my idol, as you know, was Sarah Chang.
Right.
She's a few years older than me, and she just played so wonderfully. Like I still look at her younger recordings, and I'm just like, how did she even do that? So that's sort of been my story in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then
So
you moved to California?
I did. I moved to California, and so I was in the LA area. Um, and let's see here. I think a few months after I arrived, I had a teacher locally, near where I lived, and he like came to my house to teach me and things like that because I needed a teacher. But I think I went to audition for Colburn, one of the Colburn teachers, and at that time it was still attached to USC. Shortly after, it became its own entity, but I went to apply to be a student for one of the teachers there, and the student before my trial lesson was she was incredible. Like she must have been in like I don't know maybe early high school, and she was playing some song concerto, and then the teacher asks her, so how many hours did you practice? And she says 4 hours a day. And the teacher says, no, that's not enough. You need to practice 6. And I'm just like, what?
That's a hard act to follow, right?
It is. And I thought she was just incredible too. And even though I started practicing at 1 hour a day, as you know, a parent role is so important in child's progress. And unfortunately, my mother wasn't as around in my elementary school years. So then I think my interest and motivation just started kind of going down, especially third, fourth grade, because I wanted to hang out with my friends. And being from Japan, you have a lot more freedom to, go outside by yourself and just like
Oh,
play
the
until
culture is so different, right?
it's very different. I actually rode the subway by myself to go to violin lessons, like when I was in third and fourth grade.
Wow.
So it's a very different culture, and so I was kind of culture shocked too. But so yeah, I came here and then that happened. And obviously I play for her. And she says, it's amazing how fast your left hand moves even though you lift your fingers so high up. It's like
Oh,
it's not a compliment, right? It's just
okay.
like your technique is bad.
Oh no.
But so that and then she said, well, if you can promise me that you can put in, I think she said 4 to 6 hours a day, then
Wow.
I can take you.
And how old were you at
Otherwise,
that time?
I'm sorry.
How old were you like during that time?
I was 11. I was 11. Yeah, I
Wow.
was
So
in.
4 to 6 hours a day for a 11-year-old, that's kind of crazy. I don't know in my mind.
It seems crazy, but I think for the kids that want to be at that level, that's
Right.
about the sweet spot, right?
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. Like depending on your goals. Just my son just turned 10 years old and he probably practiced half an hour to an hour a day. So like to me, 4 to 6 hours sounds like a lot.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
it's quite a bit. And that means that you have to give up a lot of other things, right? Like you
Right.
can't really do anything else. So, it's no, well, okay. So I thought about it, and
Mm,
I am not gonna be able to do that.
mm-hmm.
There's just no way. Like I hadn't built up that stamina, and I just don't even know where this is going, really, right? So then the teacher said I can refer you to another teacher. So then I was referred to another teacher at Colburn, who was a Suzuki method teacher. And she took me, and she was really, really great for me. She was understanding. I also didn't speak any English. I spoke zero English
Wow.
at the time. But my mother was actually a translator, so she actually translated a lot of things for me.
That's good.
Yeah, and what I realized here is the kids just had such different sound than what I was used to back in Japan.
Mm,
Like they had this like full mature sound, and I just didn't even know a child can sound like that. Besides searching, because searching is special, you know. But it's just all of these kids that were in the orchestra with me. They might not be playing like as hard of a repertoire as I was, but they had this incredible sound, and and they're younger than me, so I had no excuse. So I actually got motivated from there, and I started practicing just tonalization, just open string every day. At least like 15-20 minutes of just open string, just looking in the mirror, just like trying to figure out how this thing worked. Um, So from there, I actually progressed pretty quickly.
And then was there a point when so you decided to go to university for music as well, right? So was there
Well, it's a complicated story. So
okay.
I'm kind of like a jack of all trades. So yeah, I graduated high school when I was 16. I was not really ready to go to a university, and is I went to community college first, and then I transferred to a state school, and I got my music performance degree. But I was also always interested in education. So I was taking a lot of child development courses while I was at community college, and also when I went to the state school, I took classes for teachers basically. And I actually, after I finished my music degree, I went into doing math teaching credential. So
Oh,
I had a credential to be a math teacher all the way up to calculus. Uh,
wow.
yeah, it didn't quite work out. It at that time the recession hit. You know, there were no jobs. People were getting pink slipped. Teachers were getting pink slipped. I don't know if that happened in the East Coast, but in California, it was like such a huge thing where everybody was getting laid off. The class sizes got bigger, um, just to cut some expenses, right?
Right.
Um, so that's what was happening at that time, and I was also newly married, and so right before my last semester of the teaching credential program, I got married, and so I didn't really have the mobility to go just get any job. I had to be local, and honestly, I think I was already teaching violin, and I said, if I'm gonna have to do all this work just to get paid only this much, and
Yeah.
possibly having to commute like an hour and a half to 2 hours a day, maybe I should just focus on staying at home and teaching violin as needed.
Right.
Yeah. So that's sort of been the case, but I've always had music throughout my college life. So I was always very passionate in chamber music. So right out of high school, I started a group that allowed kids to participate in chamber music groups for free, basically.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and I arranged a whole bunch of music for them because a lot of them were not ready to play the regular, quartet rep. Or sometimes I had to make a weird group that contained all sorts of instruments because of the student body. So I sort of did that, and yeah. So I was always teaching in some capacity, I would say.
I see. Wow. Like I find it really interesting that you also got a math certificate. So like, and I think, I mean, I'm an engineer like by training too. So like, I feel like there's so much intersections like between math and music. Do you ever like talk about that or like think about that with your teaching or?
Yes, all the time actually.
Yeah.
I talk a lot about geometry, you know. So like the tangent line on top of the bridge, because there's an arc, right? So just imagine that there's a line going through it, sort of thing like that. I talk a lot about angles, just like visualizing, but also it's the most important thing is the logic of thinking, the logic of processing the practice. So I had to take a lot of logic classes when I was doing math credential. Well, it wasn't really for my credential. I was just I always have this mindset: if I'm gonna teach something, I better know more about it. And I just didn't feel like I knew enough about math, even if I could pass the tests. So then I took the logic class, and it was really really difficult for me. I just never thought about anything that way. It's just like first step, second step, third step, and it's like so many details. Um, and if one thing doesn't make sense, and the rest doesn't make sense, right?
Right.
So I actually had to get a lot of help from my professor in that class, and I actually succeeded. I mean, I can't say that I will be able to pass the class now without any help, but it really got me thinking in definitely so many different ways, and it also forced me to visualize a lot of the equations that doesn't really make sense on paper. You know, you see x squared, you're just like, what's that, right? But like, it forces you to actually graph and like, you know, they say, okay, it's a three-dimensional space for this equation. You have to be able to imagine what the shape is like. And I was just, you know, I was just never good um, with visualizing based on what I see. So
Yeah.
it really forced me to do that. So I think that really helped with the teaching for sure.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting because I think everybody has different learning styles, right? So like as a teacher, we kind of have to think about like, okay, for this child, like how do I explain it so that they can understand it, and maybe for a different child, it's a different way.
Yes, exactly. So I think all of those training and background came into play with my teaching style. And, you know, when I was in college, I actually had a full time job as an accounting clerk
Oh, wow.
for 9 months. Whole 9 months. I lasted 9 months.
Wow.
But that was also interesting because I got to see how a company works because it was a small company, and you know I was the only accounts receivable, so there's nowhere to hide. It's just me
You're
or
like
nobody else.
everything comes to you.
Everything comes to me, and you know, I think I got the hang of what it's like to work with other people. There, I wouldn't say I did really well with that, but I had a much better idea of how the real world functioned after that. Yeah.
Wow, cool. So then after college, did you go, so you said you just continue teaching, and then like were you also playing in orchestra, or were you like performing, or kind of curious like how you got into, the different groups that you were involved in?
Okay, so the performance side of things, I did most of it in my high school years. Because you know, as I said, I went to Colburn, so then we had these things called the Friday night recital, and basically you have to get nominated by your teacher to perform.
Oh,
So you have to kind of be on top of your game in order to participate. And
I see.
also, there was this thing called a school recital and an honor recital. So you had to be chosen from the Friday night recital by the judges to participate in the school recital and also be nominated for the honor recital audition. So it was a lot of just performance all the time at
Mhm.
that time. And because I was also involved in orchestras and chamber music there, obviously lots of performances there. So I feel like most of the chunk of my performance happened already in high school. Um, so you asked me how I got into all these other things. Well, again, it's sort of a complicated story, but so I kept teaching. So Gene, my husband, already was the music director for CYOSC, Community Youth
Oh,
Orchestra in California. And at that time, I think when I came in initially, it was like 25 or 30 students, or very small. So then I became the orchestra manager for CYOSC while it was still small, but I still kept on teaching. I had my kids during that time. I also got interested in Suzuki training because Jean's a good friend who also worked for CYOSC was or is still a very active Suzuki teacher, and she said, you know, you just gotta give this a try. And I'm gonna be completely honest here. I did not have a very good feeling about this because going through Colburn, it was sort of like, okay, the Suzuki kids don't really play at a high level. That's like the stigma
oh,
that they had.
interesting.
So, and so we were sort of kind of, I wouldn't say forced into the mindset, but you just kind of get this implicit bias sort of thing, right? Where you start thinking, oh yeah, like Suzuki teachers are like the lower ranks, and like all these, you know, people who teach in colleges and whatnot. And I know that there are Suzuki teachers who teach in colleges, but me being ignorant, I didn't know that. So that's sort of how I viewed the whole thing, and I said, you know what, I don't know. And she just kept on saying, you know, I think you'll like it. I know you were once a Suzuki student. You should go check it out. So I said, okay, you know what, I will go check it out. And so that's how I started my Suzuki training journey. and I went to the Florida.
Interesting and like a bit surprising because like I maybe falsely assumed that like every kid who goes through the Suzuki method automatically loves it and so
Well,
it's
that
a
means
bit
that you
interesting.
belong to a big studio. Like I think your kids probably belong to a really fun and empowering sort of studio, but it doesn't always happen that way, right?
Depends a lot on the teacher, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. So, uh, yeah, I went to the Suzuki training in Florida, and I got my Unit One and ECC training down, and then I sort of kind of kept going from there because I had such a good experience with Carrie Rooney Hummel. That she was my teacher trainer, and I know she was the person at Ithaca for a while, I think. And I think she's still very involved, but she was just so great with communicating with parents and the students, and that's something I hadn't really gotten training in because being a performance major or even being any music major in college, you're not really told to deal how to. I mean, you're not taught to deal with a lot of these situations of dealing with young children with different needs and learning styles. I mean, we talk about learning styles a lot in teaching credential, obviously, but that's more of a group situation. But 101 is, quite different. And what impressed me the most is how she was able to connect with the parents. Because that was something I was really, 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 really bad at, is connecting with the parents.
I think that's very difficult, right? Because some parents can be very difficult.
Yes, that too, but I think because of my privileges of upbringing, I just didn't understand parents who didn't want to what do you call it, like take the kids to concerts or like didn't want to push their children. um, I mean, I just didn't really see eye to eye with a lot of the parents at that time. I was still very young too, but so that was really an eye-opening experience for me to see how that made such a huge, huge difference.
Mm, awesome. So now that you've been teaching Suzuki method, would you say like you would recommend that for everybody, or do you still think that some kids should go through Suzuki method, but other kids maybe the more traditional? Like, how do you kind of make that determination?
So this is probably where I get into a little bit of trouble for saying this, but
Well, it's your opinion, right? And I guess like every person is different. So, I mean, I would imagine that it's not gonna be a clear black and white, of course.
right,
But
of course, and that is actually exactly my view is that there's no black and white. And I've been thinking a lot about it. I mean, for years actually, um, and I think that Suzuki is actually a philosophy, and I've heard this before. You know, it's not really a method; it's a philosophy. It's a philosophy about how children learn and how the Suzuki triangle, so to speak, is really really important, and also just having the group environment and all sorts of things so that the child can grow as a whole, right?
right.
That is the concept there, and that's the philosophy. And so, as a Suzuki teacher, um, and some people may not view me as a Suzuki teacher, but I think that that is something that's really important to keep in mind. It's not so much about what I do within my curriculum, but it's about the spirit
Mm.
of the method or the philosophy that is important. So to answer your question, it depends on the student
Sure.
very, very vastly, and because Suzuki method is not really designed for older kids or adults.
Oh, okay. So I'm
Yeah.
doing the wrong thing.
Well, so I have a very unique situation here, and I think you can probably relate to this. But learning a first language is very different from learning a second language
Mhm. Right.
because when you're learning your first language, you're hearing all these things, and you still don't know how to express yourself yet.
Mhm.
So then you tend to learn in a certain way, and also children, they're okay with a lot of failures. They were designed for that. Like you start to walk, you fall. and you try again, and you try again, and you try again, and I don't even know how many times a child tries again and again to walk, and you can see that, like, a 5-year old is not the same as 8-year olds walking, and the is 3-year old is not the same as the 5-year old. Like, they keep on getting better at skills, even with as simple as walking, that they've been trying ever since, what, like, maybe starting from 9, even earlier than that, months old, right?
Mhm.
Like, they've been wanting to get up and walk because they see adults do it, right? But it's a lot of just, being uncomfortable with it, but they never ever ever give up, right?
Mhm.
And I think children still have that sort of mindset. It's okay to take baby steps.
Mhm.
What often happens with older students and adults is that it's not okay to fail so many times.
You have different expectations.
You have different expectations because you already know enough about the world. You already know how to move your body, right? So if I say, open my arm this way, why shouldn't I be able to do it?
Mhm.
Right? That's the expectation that you come up with. And I think that's the reason why sometimes, or most often, you need to take very different approach from younger child to older learners.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm learning Suzuki violin right now just because it's, I guess for me it's convenient because we're doing all online classes and we have the same teacher and
Mhm.
it's going great. So I think so far it's going okay, and I'm trying to lower my own expectations of how far, because like I want to play book 4 pieces, right? But I'm just like, okay, I'm still doing long longo.
So that's the hard thing about teaching is, or even learning, is what do you need to expect? Like, what should you expect? And I've actually had a wall with that myself. I mean, as you know, I've been doing a 100-day challenge, right? And I've been doing a lot of things that is really, really uncomfortable for me. For example, being on social media is not my jam. It's just not. And I was always afraid of doing anything, posting about myself. I mean, what's that, right? So, uh, I started Instagram because of the 100-day challenge. I had my, personal account that had like pictures of my family just to update people, but that's different, right?
Right.
In what you're trying to do if you were to do it in this capacity. And it was just so, I felt so vulnerable doing it at first. And when I did my first post, it was like me talking, and public speaking is also not my thing. I'd rather play for people. I can't speak in public. So even this is like sort of a hard step for me.
You're doing great.
So, so when I'm going through this 100-day challenge, and I'm on Instagram, and I'm starting to see all these posts on the feed, right? Because they suggest things, and I start scrolling through because, well, that's what you're supposed to do,
Right.
right? It's so tempting to do that anyway, and I'm actually glad that I did that because, um, so as I'm doing this, so I can see that, doing scales and things every day, I'm starting to get more comfortable. I don't know if it's more comfortable again, or I actually realize more things because I've been teaching. But either way, I'm getting more comfortable with certain things. And then I meet this lady, Ling Kuo. I think you've seen some of my posts about her, right? And I see her scale challenges, and I said, well, I'm working on the scale. Maybe I should try this, right? I try it, and then it's well, it wasn't very good, but I just still posted it anyway because I was like, oh, this is kind of a cool concept. So I thought maybe if I thought it was cool, other people will be inspired to do it. Also because it's like the same thing as me watching that lady on the TV, right? It's
Right.
and I'm obviously not as good as Lynn, but then I'm still trying anyway. So maybe that will inspire other people to sort of try it.
Yeah.
Um, and so that was my thinking, and I did not expect her to actually comment on my post. And I was like actually so embarrassed. I said, "Oh my goodness, she saw my post," because I just tagged her thinking, "Oh, it's good to give credit to the right source so that they can also look at the original thing and be like, wow, she's incredible, right?" Um, so then after that, she actually egged me on to do another one.
Oh, okay.
That's why my second post came about of that different bowing, and that one was a lot harder too. And it was faster. And then, so that's kind of how my journey with her started. That was like only a week and a half ago or so.
But
Um,
it's kind of cool that we can connect with so many different people on social media. I mean, even though it might be a bit uncomfortable, but it kind of like pushes you to do things.
exactly. And I was just so thankful that I took the leap to do that. So I actually enrolled in her boot camp that's starting on the 15th.
I looked at that, then I'm like, this is way too advanced for me. Like, I just gotta, finish book one.
Yeah, I mean, there's different scales of things that you can do, obviously. But for me, I felt like that was the right thing to do. And it's a small group, and I was thinking, okay, I can get attention from this incredible lady, and I actually found out through talking to her that she is my height. So I'm only 5 feet
Oh.
tall. So I'm
I'm
very
also five, I think I'm 5'1".
Oh wow, okay, so we're
Yeah,
about the same
we're the
height.
same. Yeah, so small hands.
Yeah, understand how this works, right? So, and I had never had a teacher that was as short as me. So,
Oh.
talking to her, and obviously she can do everything. So, that kind of gave me the new validation to say, you know what, it's actually possible to play on a full size violin and still sound incredible even as a short person.
Mm.
You just probably have to do different things to make it more comfortable for yourself. It's almost like playing a viola, you know. But and so that's how we got started with talking. And for me, because I haven't had a teacher ever since college, right? So I didn't even know where to start. Honestly, like with the practice, I felt like I was just kind of like shooting in random places. Oh, I can do this and I can do that, right?
Yeah.
And then she actually gave me a more clear direction. So she asked me, "So what do you want to do with this camp?" And I said, I want to be really comfortable with my violin playing." And that's when the height thing came about. And then so I said, "Well, I want to work on more Bach because I know I did not work on Bach enough when I was in college and high school, and that is definitely probably contributing to some of my problems." Uh, because I always have pitch problems. So I said, I want to work on Bach. And then she said, oh, okay, let's start with this Bach, which is the B minor partita, the beret movement. And so after that, I started practicing and I started to notice my different habits. And so even like just getting pointed to the right piece was, you know, that kind of gave me more solid direction. And I feel like a good teacher will provide that sort of, aha, this is what I need. I need to do this. This is why I'm uncomfortable. I mean, obviously on a different scale depending on where you are in your journey. Um, but that's exactly what I needed at this moment. So,
That's awesome. And it's so great to see that, I think as a mom and as a busy person, right, to still be able to find that time and the like dedicated that time to improve ourselves. I think it's definitely something to applaud.
yeah, well, it's also fun. It just kind of gives you new life to try to do different things. And I mean, I think this interview couldn't have come at a better time, honestly. This week has been like such a journey for me. I don't know what it is, but everything just happened this week.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, so there was that boot camp, and then also there's a couple other things that happened. What was it? I mean, there's a lot of things, and now I'm just sort of thinking like, what happened exactly? So life changing, but
Oh,
I mean, one thing is I posted the duet for Kabalevsky too, and then the people who wrote the duets like, oh, can we use your video?
ooh,
So I said, wait, whoa,
cool.
where did this come from, right? But that was like a week ago. Um, so this week I actually redid the post because I was sight reading when I first did it. So I was like, this is not good. Like, please do not post this. This is embarrassing, right? Um, and so I did another one. I posted it, and they asked me to post it on Facebook. And on Facebook, so Instagram is sort of like my training ground. Like not many people know about it yet. So But my Facebook is filled with really talented people. You know, like I have professional music playing friends
Ah,
on there. So I was so nervous. Like my mentor's on there to my teacher.
oh, so it's very exposing.
So I was like, oh no, I gotta post this thing. And I mean, I could still see that I had a lot of problems in that video, but I still posted it anyway. I say, you know what? Like, I want to promote these duets because I thought the duets were done really, really well. And I think more people need to be able to have access to it. So I said, okay, I'm gonna post it publicly on my Facebook. um, and I actually got a lot of positive comments. So that was sort of an empowering step for me. I could look at it negatively, but I chose to look at it positively.
Yeah,
And I think that was just like, okay, so I'm not dead, and my career is not over. I'm okay.
you're okay.
I'm okay. So that happened, and also I was, I've been doing a lot of things with Miss Catherine, and we have a lot of talks throughout the weeks, and
Oh,
we did the Vivaldi post, and that was pretty well received, I think. And that was also, I mean, I know she felt empowered, but it was empowering for me to be able to do that. Um, and I've been talking to my high school students and his friend, and they've been volunteering, but they wanted to do more.
mm.
So we had like a very late night conversation about this because they're on Pacific time. I'm on Easter time, so I was up till like 2 o'clock in the morning to like talk
Oh,
to. But it was so nice to see that young and fresh energy again, and I remembered what it was like when I was their age. So all of that sort of happened this week. It was a very exciting experience because I feel like I was a little stuck, in this like a teacher hole. You kind of get stuck like, well, you're a teacher, you're not supposed to have a teacher, or like, you're
oh,
not gonna be performing because like, you haven't been performing for months, you don't, or years. I haven't practiced, so it was hard for me to actually pick up practicing every day. It took a lot of courage for me to even participate in that 100-day challenge.
wow, that's so inspiring because, as a person, like I'm a beginner in violin, definitely, ground floor, but just like hearing that, I'm sure you're so good, but you still have so much doubts. Like I think everybody have doubts about how they play, like no matter what level you are. So I think it's just, I guess it's a bit comforting to think that, like everybody has doubts, right? Like even if, because when I hear you play on Instagram and all, I'm just like, whoa, she's a violin goddess. Like it's so amazing. I don't hear anything wrong, just because I don't even like I'm not sophisticated enough to like even pick it out. But I'm sure like like you've noticed it, or like maybe more professional people notice it. But I think as an audience member, I'm just like, whoa, this is so great.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that is definitely true. Like when you have more and more knowledge about it, you start to enjoy the little details. Same with any sort of art, right? You paint, so you probably understand this too. But once you start getting better at it, you just start to notice more details as to how to make it better. And most of the people can't tell you exactly what's wrong with it.
Mm.
But if you compare like more detailed work done compared to like a rough draft, right?
Mm.
They will be able to sort of tell you, well, I think this one looks better. You know, like it looks like more proportional. Like I don't know, right? I mean, I don't know anything about art, so I wouldn't be able to tell you either. But I can tell you, if I'm looking at like especially clothing, right? Like the cheap knockoffs definitely look different from the expensive stuff because it's in the details that matters, right?
Yeah. So I want to ask you too, like as a Suzuki parent, so now your kids are doing the Suzuki method, or like how does that feel like being, also the teacher, but then like how, I guess I don't know how to ask this question, but
Uh,
I
yeah,
guess I what's your
I know
parent
what you mean.
journey?
I know what you mean. And so this is probably another part where I get into trouble. I don't practice with my children every day. They practice by themselves,
Mhm.
you know. And but the road to be able to do that is what's important, right? Just like homeschooling too. But when my son was it was younger, he had learning challenges. So
Mm.
his speech was about, I think, what did I say, like 22 months behind or something like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was, um, yeah, at that time he was like 3 or 4 years old, almost 4 years old maybe. Um, and they were like, yeah, your son really needs speech help. And also he had problems with fine motor control. So
Mm.
he couldn't actually cut with scissors when he was 3 years old. So we started with speech therapy and then occupational therapy. So when he turned 4, I decided to start teaching him violin because it's good for fine motor control and just get him to move his body in a detailed way. And he was, very awkward about it, right? Because he already had challenges. But I said to him, okay, we're going to do this one exercise every single day, just every single day without skipping for like a week. Okay, next week we're gonna add one more thing. We're gonna do this. And then the next week we're gonna add one more thing. And then, as he gets better at it, it doesn't take that long to do the exercise, right? At first you don't even know like how to move your bow. So you don't know if you're supposed to go this way, if you're supposed to go this way, if you're supposed to open from here, and there's just so many possibilities, right? Um, so that's kind of how I started with him, and I had I think I had some sort of sticker chart that shows him, okay, you completed all the days in the week, so you get a reward for this. So that's sort of how I started. Very, very, very baby steps. Um, I did that for a while, and he is a child of routine. I mean, he has his learning challenges too, but his strength is that he is very, very consistent. Like he will not skip a day once the routine is established. But it takes a while for a routine to establish. It doesn't happen overnight. You don't just do it for 1 week and say, okay, you got the routine, so you're gonna go do it by yourself. So so he was good about practicing every day, and then I was practicing with him every day until I think he started kindergarten or something like that. And then I started to leave him alone in some exercises. I would like start with him and I would be like, okay, you work on this by yourself, sort of thing. So I started kind of weaning him off of it gradually. And recently, well, ever since we moved to the East Coast, it's been kind of rocky. So he's been practicing by himself a lot of the time, and he was actually refusing lessons for like a month, a good month or so. Like I did not see him for a whole entire month, and he actually did okay, considering that he was left alone. But and then I started to give him guidelines of, okay, I need to see you at least once a week, like it's a lesson. So that basically means that he gets lessons once a week, but otherwise he is left alone to practice. But it's that routine that's important. So now he practices tonalization, right, at first, and then tonalization with vibrato. Then he does all his scales from like major, minor, melodic minor, harmonic minor, arpeggios, broken thirds, like the whole thing up to the double stops. Um, and so that he does the routine and then he gets into his pieces and he does the reviews. I should probably assign him an etude, but and that's sort of what his routine is looking like right now. But as long as it's always structured that way, I think children just don't think anything about having to do basics. They just think this is just part of the process. Like this is why I have an easier time playing certain passages, right? Because he learns a piece, he looks at it, and it doesn't look that technically challenging for him most of the time. It's just about learning the notes at that point. So
Because he already has the basics down.
right, right. So then he's able to move through faster. So that's I guess that's where it overlaps with me being a Suzuki parent and me being a Suzuki teacher. Is my teaching style is very much like, okay, let's establish the basics, the fundamentals. So they take a really long time doing book one, and after that, like depending on the kid, like they can just move really fast. So I think my record is like, if with a kid after they finish book one, by the next year, they're, well, not even the next year. I think, in like about 9 months, they were like on book four.
Whoa.
But that's like a, very exceptional case. And I've had a couple students who did that, but not that many.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
How
I
do you,
mean, I have kids who move slowly too, but yeah.
yeah, I'm curious too, because like, how do you feel about like being the teacher and the parent? So you teach your kids, right?
Mhm,
Like,
mhm,
do you recommend that? Like, do you think that's because I teach piano to my son, but like I
mhm.
feel like sometimes like I'm the teacher and the parent, even though like we save a lot of money that way, but I don't know if that's like really the best situation. Like, is that I guess it depends on every family too, but
It depends on the kids, actually, I think. So I don't teach my daughter. There's a
oh,
reason why I
okay,
don't teach cello,
right.
right? It's because I can't teach her. I can't be her teacher. I can practice with her, but she's also been very independent. She doesn't really want me to practice with her unless she needs help. But again, it's like that establishing the basics of how do I problem solve, even as kids. Like they need to figure out how to problem solve on their own, and the earlier that they can do that, the earlier they can be more independent on their practicing, right? So I think there's definitely a merit to that, and also there's obviously like a hindrance to it too, right? If I don't practice with them, they obviously don't move quite as fast. If I push them to practice, my daughter, my daughter teacher tells me all the time, "Oh yeah, the weeks that you practice with her, she's like really, really solid."
She can tell the difference.
But I do tell her honestly, I don't always practice with her
Hmm.
because she doesn't want me around. She wants to figure it out on her own for the most part, and I think that's also an empowering experience. But it's you have to balance the two, and that's where it gets really tricky, right? Because you have to give them the tools. You have to give them enough tools. But when do you know that you've given them enough tools? How do you know that? I
Mm-hmm.
think the answer is you don't know if you've given them enough tools.
Hmm.
So it's always easy to point out the extreme cases where the teacher and the parents haven't trained the child to practice by themselves. And they go and try to practice by themselves, but they get frustrated, so they don't practice, right?
Hmm.
So then that's easy to blame the parent. Hey, you need to practice with your children,
Hmm.
right? But when does it get too much for the kid to have a parent around? When is it too much to be able to learn the skill of problem solving and kind of feeling the accomplishment of yes, I did it by myself, right? I think Ed Sprunger kind of talked about that too a little bit.
Hmm.
When
I'm
he
still working through the book.
when he did the session with us
Right.
today, he said like you have to learn to just watch from the distance,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And I think
Not
that's
to
like
interfere too much.
right, right.
Yeah.
So that's like the process that he broke it down a lot more than what I explained. My case was very like quick. Okay, so we've been building up for a while, and yeah, okay. Well, especially with my daughter. I think with my son, it was a lot more of a gradual process. But I think with my daughter, because she's seen my son do it, so it's like, of course I should be able to do this too.
Ah, mm-hmm.
And I think that's why she's extra stubborn about like not wanting to practice with me.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's either I'm okay with her progress and she's okay with her progress and her teacher is okay with her progress and then just let her do it as much as she wants. I mean, she does ask for help when it gets really challenging,
Mm-hmm.
right? She can't figure it out on her own, even if she thought about it. But for the most part, yeah, I just kind of let my kids figure it out.
Yeah, I think there's definitely merit to that.
Mm-hmm.
Because my son Micah practices by himself, and Jonah mostly practices by himself, but sometimes, I have to actually be there so he doesn't just practice and then run away. So
Right,
it's
right. So
like a combination.
yeah, so that's the hard part, right? How do you train your children to actually practice? Practice in detail, right? They're not just going through the motion and yeah, okay, I'm done, right?
Right.
And that's where the listening comes in. And I think the listening, so listening serves two different purposes, and I don't think they should be combined together all the time.
Mm.
And one is you're learning a piece and you're trying to figure out what the notes are and the rhythms are and how the general idea of how it goes. Okay. Second one is how do I want to sound like? So if you don't like the recording, second one is not accomplished because you're not gonna be like, oh, I want to sound like this. You say, oh, well, I mean, it's okay,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I mean, I just rather just get through it and just be done with it,
Yeah.
right? So if you find like a recording, especially of that particular piece that you're working on, and you aspire to be like that, then there is more. You're more likely to practice more in detail to try to sound like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're faced with this reality. Oh, I don't sound like that,
Yeah.
but I want to sound like that, and I think that's where the tricky part is because as you may know, especially with music majors, a lot of kids get depressed because of that concept. Oh, there's all these kids that are here, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm right here.
Mm-hmm.
So in a healthy environment, you aspire to be like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in an unhealthy environment, you're like, there's no way I can sound like that.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how much I try, or maybe I just don't have what it takes. And yes, a lot of the time we don't have what it takes to be Sarah Chang. You know, I didn't have what it takes to be Sarah Chang. Um, and but the reason why is not so much because you know I'm untalented or that. I mean, yes, she is very talented. And I don't know, even if I worked as hard as she did and had all her background, I don't know if I can get there because that's what makes her exceptional, right? Talent is not just one fold. You're not just talented and you can get there or not get there depending on hard work, right? So I think there's different aspects to talent. So, and important things are obviously your motivation, that aspiration of I want to sound like that. You need to have that vision, right? Second one is actually your body control.
Mm-hmm.
How are you able to move your body comfortably? Like there's some kids that are good at sports, and there's some kids who are not very coordinated. So obviously, the more coordinated you are, the more likely you can play the violin, right? Uh, I think the third one is your interest. Are you interested actually to listen to music, or even to want to play? Because some kids they just don't get attracted to classical music at all. Like no matter how hard you try, they're just like, nah, it's just not my thing, right?
Yeah.
Um, and fourth one, this is what Dr. Suzuki says is really important is parent involvement, and but parent involvement also has different factors, right? So we as parents need to like music too.
Mm-hmm.
So I see a lot of parents who don't go to concerts, who don't like music, like they don't like classical music, and they push their children to play the violin. And I'm just like, well,
Mm.
uh, can you at least listen to classical music and like get excited about it? Because a lot of the time the kids will pick up on your excitement,
Right.
right? So, so parent involvement has so many factors to it. And if the parents know how to process practicing, then they make great practice partners,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, like I was saying, because of my math background, I feel like I can logically process the order of which to do things a little bit better now than when before I learned about all this stuff. If you're a scientist, you're more likely to be able to do that as well because you have to make your what is it called, the not the lab report, but you know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. Like kind of make everything flow, right? Make it make
Yeah,
sense.
you have to have a procedure to do any experiment.
Mm-hmm.
um, so I think that's why a lot of the people who have parents in science field, the kids tend to thrive because they have to do that for their work all the time.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
um, that's just my theory. That's not a founded
That's
study or anything.
interesting thought. I never thought about it that way before. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's a lot of factors of parent involvement. It's not just about driving the kids to lessons or but being able to pay for it is the other thing too, right? being able to have the mobility to actually search for a teacher.
You mentioned the accessibility part, right? And I think the cost of violin lessons or any kind of music lessons can be a barrier for a lot of families. So I want to sort of ask, what's your vision for with Musissho? And I know that there's already so much great resources that our family has enjoyed.
So with I mean, I guess I can just take it back to the very beginning of the concept. So even when I was at COC, so I started as an orchestra manager, but later when it became bigger and bigger, I became the executive director, and I was actually the executive director for I think 2.5 years. Um, so my vision there was, we keep the tuition low so that it's more accessible to kids because things in Southern California is really really expensive. So we were like the cheapest youth orchestra in the area.
Oh,
And we always try to provide help to kids who needed help. So, for example, we purchased the bass, two basses, double basses, for students to be able to use. We have a lot of percussion instruments. We even have a left-handed violin.
oh wow.
So we've always been about accessibility. I mean, we can't help everybody, so obviously we can't help the kids who have nothing. And we just didn't ever get to that point. It's not because we didn't want to help them, but we chose the battles to fight, and we wanted to try to reach kids who were also motivated, but there was a limit to how much we can help. So anyway, that's kind of always been our vision is this inclusivity, right? Can't even say the word. But and we've always been about that. And so when the pandemic hit, we had to move very fast. We decided actually before the school closed down that we were going to close down. The rehearsals because we didn't know when it was going to be canceled, and we don't want to be scrambling at that moment that everything has to shut down.
Right.
Um, so we announced it, and like the week later, we actually conducted our first online rehearsal.
Oh, wow.
That's sort of where it started. And then we started to notice a lot of people were getting laid off. And, a lot of kids don't have access to group class. So then that's when I decided to develop backing tracks. The backing tracks has always been in my mind because I feel like, having that full orchestra backing track is just awesome.
Oh, beautiful.
It just motivates you to practice to play more beautifully, I think. But so it's always been in my head, but I was just like, this is the time to do it. So we decided to get it together, and by May we were able to roll this out, the play in every single week. I'm just trying to provide a platform for kids to just be able to play together, and it's a great format to just review. It kind of forces you to just play through and review. So that's sort of how it came about. And because I have young children myself, and I wanted to provide them the music appreciation classes. And I said, you know what? If I'm gonna do this for my kids anyway, I might as well open it up to other kids. And so that's how I created the Kahoot class. So I actually did that during the summer, and that was a big hit. So then I decided to do it again, just a slightly different format here. Yeah.
I see. Wow, that's so great. I mean, I think it's so unique because I think normally like you see online like, oh, get a free class, but they really want you to sign up for their, paid membership or whatever.
Right.
But I just love that you have that vision of providing that accessibility for kids and, of any income bracket and just allowing that, you know, like availability is awesome.
Thank you.
It's so appreciated.
Thank
And
you.
I love that you don't like ever pressure anybody. Like I know you mentioned like you don't have to have your camera on, just come on and whatever age you are, like I'll play with you as an adult, you know what I mean? Like I just feel like it's such a welcoming community. So
Thank you. Yeah, it's a lot of fun to just play together, right? It's almost like
absolutely.
being in a big space with all these people, except we can't hear each other, so that's the only bummer, really. But also, it kind of makes you feel like you can participate even if you don't feel completely prepared,
Hmm.
you know. So
Right.
I think there's a merit to that too.
I think it's a great way to get people from all over the world to play together. It's such a cool opportunity.
But in terms of the music appreciation courses, though, I think those can continue online.
Hmm.
But also, as you know, Miss Catherine is volunteering her time right now
Yeah.
because she's basically still kind of training,
Hmm.
right? And she's actually in high school still. So,
Oh, really?
and
Wow, I didn't know that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I know because she has so much knowledge. I mean, like the amount of knowledge that she possesses about music is actually incredible. Because I would definitely let my kids go to those classes. It's so, you know, it's so inspiring for them to go and learn about. I mean, my son said, what did he say the other day? Oh yeah, that's Beethoven. Really, he's just like, oh, that's Beethoven.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, and I was so happy to see that because I had never seen that level of interest from him in music.
Mhm.
And he thinks it's so cool to listen to music now, you know?
Yeah.
So,
And my kids are the same way. Like they'll listen to the musical story time or the tea time, and then afterwards they'll be like, "Can we listen to this? And can we listen to this?" Because we only get these like little clips, right, in the class. But they're
yeah,
like, "We want to hear the whole thing." It's like, okay.
that's so nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think definitely for her stuff, there's a future to it that I would personally like to support her continuing on with this adventure of teaching music appreciation online.
That's awesome. Well, cool. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Your stories are so amazing and inspiring. I think it's just great to hear about your personal musical journey. And I think as kids who are getting older, I can think of like my son who's like 10 now, um, just to hear about like somebody who made a career out of music.
Hmm.
I think that's in itself is already really awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe to this channel for even more fun and interesting interviews coming up. If you are a musician or have kids in your family who are musicians or learning music, definitely check out the description below for a link to Musissho. There are music appreciation classes as well as online play-ins that they can participate in. So thank you and see you next time.